everybody. Welcome to Bottom Line with Bob and Kendel Ehrlich. We have a very important special guest today.
We have a special guest today.
Very good friend of the Ehrlichs.
Very, very good friend of the Ehrlichs. Someone we love a great deal. And someone who's served in my cabinet. Someone who's dedicated his life to the people of New York, the people of Maryland, to the people of the United States of America. A pro's pro. We call him Colonel because he was part of my cabinet, my superintendent of state police, Ed Norris. Colonel, how you doing?
Governor, how are you?
Good to see you, pal.
Great to see you guys too.
Ed's well known to a lot of folks around the country, but for those of you listening, watching for the first time, he really cut his teeth in New York as a real policeman.
Right, a real expert in crime and making places safe.
Before he became a pro, he was walking the beat, walking the streets for 20 years, rising to deputy commissioner of New York City, and then came to Baltimore, became police commissioner of Baltimore City when we really got to know each other. Then, as I said, became my state superintendent, which is a cabinet level position. Now hosts a Big Bad Morning Show in Baltimore. He's the author of Way Down in the Hole. He is an acknowledged expert on crime and punishment issues, and we thought we needed to get away from Afghanistan for a minute.
Yeah.
We're going to go back. It's not going to be this too shall pass with concerning Afghanistan, but the second, if you will, major issue in the United States today is crime, violent crime, the spiking of violent crime rates in our major cities. No better person to have on than Ed Norris. So, Ed, let's just start a little bit with New York. You were credited, Rudy Giuliani was credited, your crew was credited with a dramatic decrease in crime rates in New York. What did you do? How did you do it? And talk about the role of political leadership in the process.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, it sounds kind of flip to say, well, we acted like the police finally, but it's true because unfortunately, this is the way it goes. This was a dirty little secret in American policing. People leading police agencies very often were men who spent their entire careers avoiding decisions. They make no decisions. You can't get any trouble. Many were never on the street. They wouldn't know how to open up a pair of handcuffs. But they never had a mark on their record. They went to all kinds of school at night. They worked in headquarters. Unfortunately, they don't know the business. And they actually had some disdain for the men and women who actually do the work on the street because they get in trouble sometimes. They get blood on them. They get dirty. It's a very messy business. And they didn't even understand the process. I've had some people who were so-called experts in the world say the most outrageous things who were allegedly experts in policing. They couldn't understand. I was at Harvard for a summer, and a professor there was from Britain, could not accept the fact that New York actually cracked it and was able to reduce crime. And what we did was, I was so frustrated by the time Giuliani became mayor, I was about to leave. I was applying to federal agencies because the city had gotten so dangerous. And if people don't know, the way he actually won that election, a 4-year-old child was shot in a barber chair, shot to death. And when the kid was killed, the headlines in New York papers were Dave do something. It was David Dinkins. And that's when the election for Giuliani was. Crime was so out of control. We get Rudy Giuliani as the mayor, very pro-police. He actually decides the city's going to be safe, has a vision, brings in Bill Bratton, who's an innovative police commissioner, who had Jack Maple with him, who I learned from. And Jack was just a savant. He really was. And what he did was, it sounds so simple. It's embarrassing to even tell people. We were living on, first on the reputation of the NYPD for years and not doing much about crime. The city was incredibly dangerous. It was the butt of every late night comics jokes.
Yeah, I remember.
It was a horrible situation we had. At the peak, we had 2,245 people murdered in New York 1 year. And what they would do is there's chiefs would basically say, oh, it goes up, it goes down, not much you can do about it. They had no idea what the police was actually doing. And I'll tell you how simple this was. Jack started actually mapping the crime, just took a map of New York City and the 75 police precincts and would push pins, map the crime by time of day, what type of crime, and patterns would emerge. And then he would ask people, we'd bring in the commanders of those districts and precincts, say, what are you doing about this? You have, 50 robberies on the 4 to 12. How come? What's going on? Is there a methadone clinic? What's going on at this? And all of a sudden answers would come and patterns would emerge and people would actually start solving things. And then people resisted, and we started, digging deeper. And when they would say they couldn't find somebody wanted for murder, he's in the wind, I don't want to spook. They had us go out, me in particular. I went out because I was still a sworn member of the service. So I had police powers, and I would go out with my band of detectives, and we'd find guys, we'd put on our vests and guns at 4:00 in the morning outside the projects and bring people in who've been wanted for months or longer, who simply weren't even being sought. And we would lock them up and bring them in. That's how bad it was.
They were shocked, I'm sure.
They were shocked, and they couldn't understand how we were finding people. It was so awful that I had a commander of the sex crime unit call me. She was hysterical on the phone, crying, I'm ruining her career. You have those special computers that you're finding these people. How did you get this guy? The guy she's talking about had raped a woman at knife point in front of her children. Oh. And I told her, I said, we went to his job. That's how we got the case. Well, if you read the case folder, there was a security guard they talked to who said the guy was an elevator operator. They never followed up on it. So we went and followed up on the elevator, said, hey, how you doing? And showed a picture of a missing kid. Do you know the kid? No. We have your name? Yes. You're under arrest. That's how simple it was. And we did it in tremendous numbers, and crime started to plummet. And all the NYPD did was we'd bring the whole city in every month, precinct by precinct, and put the commanders up at a podium, ask them direct questions about crime in their precincts, what they were doing about it, see if they knew what was going on, what the plan was to stop it, and and to be creative. And it was four simple tenets of this. It was basically, timely intelligence, which is your radar system. They were working on stuff that was 6 weeks old. So the robbery pattern, from mid-July does not apply in September. Yeah. So we did it in real time. Effective tactics. You had to be creative, and we would actually go out and, we had a bunch of bicycle shootings. Couldn't stop people getting shot on bicycles, 3:00 in the morning in Bedford Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. Cops went out and started enforcing bicycle regulations. Guys on the sidewalk, no helmet, stupid regulation you never enforce. Came up with a ton of handguns, and the shooting stopped. Mm-hmm. And the last one, the secret was to just be relentless. You had to keep on. It's hard work. You had to keep on it and keep on it and keep on it. And hard work is the key, and that's what a lot of people don't want to do. But over those years, we led the nation in crime decline, and I got to lecture around the world because of it. I was in Paris and Frankfurt and London, and because everyone knew the secret to crime reduction that the academics could not accept. But that's how we did it in New York.
Criminal defense lawyer, prosecutor here has a question for you.
Well, no, also, you had enough personnel to do it. I mean, you look at Baltimore with the need for 400 police officers, all these other cities. The other question I have for you is, how do you feel now about New York and the increase in the crime? Overall crime rate 22% up, every category way up right now in New York. How do you feel about that? It can be fixed again. What kind of things would you implement?
And Ed, in your answer, address broken windows and stop and frisk, please.
Sure. And I should address the fact about, you mentioned before, the executive of the city you have to have the support of your chief executive. Yeah. If you don't have your mayor or county executive support, wherever you work, you can't do it. And we had Rudy Giuliani's support completely, and that's how we were able to work. He simply let us be the police, honestly. And I'm very disturbed with what's going on now, because look at who the mayor is. Right. Yeah. He's very anti-police. They're afraid to get out of the cars, just like in a lot of American cities. So they don't stop people. No frisking going on. I mean, stop and frisk is a completely legal tool. Exactly. Completely legal. Right. This is a Supreme Court decision. I mean, this goes back to, the U.S. versus Terry, Terry versus Ohio, excuse me. And this is something that's always been, you have a right to walk up to someone, you have the common law right of inquiry. You walk up to somebody, hey, what are you doing? He can tell you nothing. But if you see something at, the next level, you have a little, reasonable suspicion. Right. Touch them outside the clothes. You feel something that feels like a weapon. You go inside the clothes, and voila, you have a pistol. This is how it's done. And they've made this into some sort of horrible word and a horrible tactic, where the impression of throwing innocent people against the wall. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And this is there's a huge lie going on in this country. And you mentioned broken windows, and I'm having this trouble down here in Baltimore, where the commissioner was actually questioned on a radio show. And he was questioned about the disorder in Fells Point, which is our tourist area down in one of our tourist areas in Baltimore. He said, well, that's not crime. Other neighbors have a different version of crime. No. In New York, we actually not just reduced crime to make it actually safer, and it was not anymore, it was, but it felt safer. There were no people, there were no squeegee people. There were people begging, banging on your windshield, coming up to your car, harassing you in the street, smoking crack out in the open. None of that went on. None of it.
So that means
Because
more tour, right? And that the result of that is more tourism, people coming to the city. People like Christmas time became, such a tourist attraction in New York City.
Just
People
felt safe.
Felt safe. They want to come there. And the other problem is these prosecutors, as you know, these very progressive prosecutors who aren't prosecuting the simple crimes. It starts with the simple crimes. It starts with the property crimes. Property crimes actually matter to people that have businesses in these cities, correct? Go with
Of course they matter. All crime matters.
Right.
Well, first of all, they're not progressive. They're stunted. They're activists, and they don't know they're not progressive at all. Because what they're doing is by not enforcing minor crimes, and these aren't minor. Property crime is not minor. If someone breaks into your car, breaks into your home, steals your wallet out of your pocket as a pickpocket, these people need to be arrested if committed a crime. But more than that, they're missing, all these cities and these idiots who are running them are missing opportunities. Because when you have people in custody for these things and you have leverage, maybe they have a warrant on, you have them on a current charge, they have an open warrant, they're facing time. Maybe they're in for a serious charge right now. It's a serious, it's a burglary, took a lot. You have some leverage. They're going to be willing to give you, they live in these neighborhoods. They know people. They know who shot John. They know exactly what happened. So you have leverage. You need to interrogate every single prisoner. That's not going on anymore. That was another thing we did in New York and in Baltimore that was hugely successful. And I'll tell you how they've got such resistance. A high-ranking member of the Brooklyn DA's office told us, Jack and I, they'll talk when pigs fly. Well, there were pigs flying all over New York City because they all talk.
Right.
They sell their mother to the Iroquois to get out of prison.
Well, Ed, your success in New York led to national recognition for you, and it led to Baltimore. And I want to get to Baltimore second here. I want to ask you what you found here. And Kendel and I have we talk about crime and punishment a lot, given our backgrounds. I've said this in public numerous times. We've talked about it numerous times. I asked you as a sitting governor one day in cabinet, whether we're in cabinet that day or not, I forget, but I asked you, Ed, why Baltimore? Why did you all have such great success in New York, and why can't Baltimore get the murder rate under control? Why Baltimore? Why Baltimore? And you told me, paraphrasing you, that in New York there were some major gangs, 4 or 5 major gangs. There was a loose sense of justice that where the gang leaders understood there were certain lines. You played between the 20s. If they got outside the 20s, they would cooperate with you at times. And you told me in Baltimore there weren't 5 gangs, there were 500 gangs. There were every 4 knuckleheads on a corner was a gang with their own rules. You walked on the wrong block, you got shot. So explore that story, your answer to me, and just what you found in Baltimore.
Yeah, it was more than that. That was not the issue. What I found in Baltimore, and first of all, I want people to know, when I was commissioner of Baltimore, we led the nation in crime decline every year for the 3 years. And murders did come down from the 320s to the mid-250s because we did the same things we did in New York. But there was not a sense of organization. This is the reason, though. The reason it was such an open and a free market for people carrying guns, carrying drugs, selling drugs, because they had given up here. They surrendered in Baltimore. They raised the white flag and were getting, quote, progressive. Mm-hmm. Because the attitude was there's nothing you can do about crime, so let's concentrate on the police athletic league centers. And I was a PAL kid myself. I grew up poor. I learned to box in a PAL center. They're great, but that's not a substitute for a safe city. And that's what they put all their effort toward. What I got here was the police department has surrendered, much like they're doing now.
Yes.
Because no one wants to stop anybody. They don't feel supported by the commissioner or the mayor in many cities. The two we're talking about included.
Or the prosecutors.
Or the prosecutor, for sure. Certainly in Baltimore.
Right. Certainly
not in Baltimore. So I'll give you an example. My first day on patrol. This was my epiphany. I came here. We were successful in New York. I'm right in Baltimore, in East Baltimore, which is one of the worst sections we have. And I'm in the marked car in uniform. I mean, I have wearing stars. I'm in a marked car. I look to my right. There's a guy, he's doing a hand-to-hand drug deal 30 yards from me. And I'm looking at him. He's looking back at me. And I'm like, now I'm so angry because he didn't even make an attempt to run or give me a little. I get out of the car and I catch the slowest drug dealer in the country. And I get him on the floor. And he's swallowing his gel. I reach his mouth. I pull out the heroin gel caps. And I said to him, I said, what is wrong with you? As you have no respect at all for the police? You don't even run, make it look like you're afraid? And his response was, nobody ever stops. So to me, that was nobody ever stops. Because the prosecutor at the time, because they think they're being progressive, or being, I don't know how, her rule was not, they make up their own law. You would not be prosecuted for possession with intent to sell unless you had 30 pieces or more of whatever you were selling. Yeah. So the drug dealers carried 29.
Right, exactly. Hello.
So I mean, a child could figure out this is not going to work. So that's where the city was at the time. And it was completely broken. They had invested nothing in the police department. They had no aviation, no helicopters in a major city with the biggest drug problem in the country. No wiretaps going, again, in the most drug-addicted city in America. They had nothing, no technology. They were showing photo arrays out of shoeboxes with photos in them instead of computer. It was awful. But that's what I found in Baltimore. And that was the main reason, because they had surrendered so much. We were really fighting an uphill battle.
Well, since Freddie Gray, we've surrendered again.
Well, since Ferguson,
it's definitely been since then.
And speaking of Freddie Gray, the real reason Kendall and I wanted you on the show this week, and we want to get into New York a little bit and Baltimore, but this is a national issue today. It is a front burner national issue. Eric Gardner in New York, Michael Brown, Ferguson, Freddie Gray, Baltimore, Breonna Taylor, Louisville, and obviously George Floyd, Minneapolis, and there are other names. These incidents with African Americans and police led to what we saw during our Great Summer of Discontent last summer. It became a major issue in our country. It impacted the presidential campaign. It's impacted our culture, our society. It's impacted our kids. It's impacted everything. It particularly impacts our quality of life for those folks who are unfortunate enough to live in many of these marginal communities. So I have a number of questions. Kendall, I have a couple questions for you concerning the national scene today. And we're going to end, by the way, with a question I've never asked you, so get ready. Concerning the political decisions, property crimes. Kendall, you just talked about it. You talked about New York and Baltimore. The orders going from these big city mayors to their police leaders during these times of unrest has been generally let property crimes go. Focus on violent crime, let property crimes grow. And I want to also ask you, you see a federal judge in Baltimore last week, Judge Stephanie Gallagher, we know her. She ruled, which is a very interesting ruling. I don't know if you had a chance to digest all this, but she ruled that the 70 businesses who have filed a complaint against the city of Baltimore have standing to go forward. Potentially this will lead to a settlement, potentially this will lead to litigation, but the decision was these businesses who suffered real damage as a result of a political decision of a mayor to allow property crimes to continue have standing to go forward in court. That is a big-time legal principle that she has arrived at, and I want you to talk about that as well, please.
It's going to be a landmark case, because what she did was, from where I sit, the first responsibility of government is protect the citizenry.
Right.
Have to protect your citizens. They did not. They allowed this to go on. The mayor was quoted saying, give them room to destroy.
Yes. I know.
This is what Dinkins did in New York. Let them vent is what we were told on the Crown Heights riots. It doesn't work. People get hurt, businesses are burned, and these businesses in a lot of these marginalized neighborhoods are not insured, so they're done. These people are out of their money. They're done. No money, no business. And yeah, they do have a right because they made no effort to protect them. I've gotten firsthand accounts from people who were assigned here from the Baltimore police, Maryland State Police, sheriffs from around the state. They were so disgusted because they were told don't engage.
Right. To stand down.
That's not even property. That's violent crime. I mean, if you commit an arson, that's a potential homicide anyway.
Well, not only that, as a prosecutor, that's not upholding the oath that you take. No. I mean, these prosecutors could be impeached based on the fact that they are stopping to support the law. They're not the ones to determine the law or if it needs a change. The legislature is supposed to do that. And so it's not, and then it goes further. In Baltimore, they're not gonna prosecute for marijuana possession. Then, in other states, Oregon and San Francisco, then they're not gonna for possession of mushrooms or this drug or that drug, as it just goes out exponentially. And it is very unsettling that the people that don't have the authority to make that decision not to prosecute are making those decisions and making these cities terribly unsafe. Look at San Francisco. It's just horrible. That beautiful city. Who wants to go there? They don't feel safe.
But as you said, the bottom line is the name of our show, and the bottom line to this issue, as Kendall just said, was you have prosecutors making political decisions that legislatures and governors make, and that's really the predicate here. That's the problem.
I mean, they should be impeached, but definitely, hopefully, people are recognizing in these cities, so the next elections, they'll be out. But that didn't happen here in Maryland. We had a prosecutor that got reelected, and she had no experience whatsoever, and that was obvious.
Well, it's pretty obvious. Almost all the ones you're talking about, from Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Baltimore, they're activists.
Yes.
This is not even at the big round. They're activists. They're very anti-police in their stance. They've been clear about it. And this is what you see now. And because the police officer, since Michael Brown, who was found by Obama's cabinet, his DOJ, he did not have his hands up. He was in the car wrestling for the officer's
police
gun.
Exonerated. Yep.
It was, yes. And there's still people, hands up, don't shoot. They believe this lie. And these folks have all jumped on board for their own political careers. And now cities are literally dying and bleeding to death. And no one seems to care. And I don't know how you're going to unseat them, because the people who actually, are doing the work and paying the taxes, they're fleeing because they see that, I live in downtown Baltimore. Our bicycles have been stolen recently in a locked building. Cars have been broken into routinely. There's been robberies right now. There's a shooting a block away in what had been a really nice area. This is where you live now. It's everywhere. And this is what you get. And it's so clear. The line is such a clear line from A to B is how we got here. The police have been emasculated in this country. They're terrified to do their jobs. People are empowered to carry their guns again. They know they're not going to be prosecuted, even if they're caught. So what do people expect to happen?
So we're talking about politicians not making decisions, or unelected folks making political decisions. We've talked about prosecutors, Soros prosecutors, not doing their job. And we've sort of talked around an issue I never thought we'd even talk about. As long as I've been in politics, the conversations we've had over the years, defund the police became an issue. It became an initiative. It became a goal. It was actually debated. The social worker deal and all this sort of ludicrous insanity. Now, you see some backing off after Seattle and Chicago and Minneapolis and New York and every other major city we can talk about. Just for a second, talk about defund the police with respect to, one, recruitment, and two, how cops do their jobs. Because the charge in Baltimore today, as you well know, is if it's something that's not violent and it's not going on now, there probably is not going to be an arrest.
No, absolutely. That's for sure. It's more than that. I mean, the police in Baltimore are truly very concerned about stopping anyone getting out of their car to intervene in any kind of crime. And property crime, low-level crime, things like that, they can't. They've been told not to do anything about it. And if you have the leadership of your police department saying, well, that's not really crime, it's no big deal. This is the other myth, by the way, that we're not concentrating on low-level crime, just violent crime. Really? Then how'd you go from having like about 200 murders every year? We've gone down since I was commissioner.
Yep.
To now you're approaching 400 a year.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not doing anything about violent crime either. So that's number one. And the police are demoralized. You ask for recruitment, you can't recruit. I am so happy that my son had no interest in policing, because I would have been devastated if he joined the police department now. This is not the time. They're more interested in putting police officers in jail than criminals. And they'll make up almost anything. You see people getting indicted around the country. It's happening in Aurora, Colorado right now. EMTs give someone ketamine and the cops have been indicted. You've got to read the story. It's just what's going on around the nation. So no, you can't recruit. You can't retain. People, they're leaving in record numbers. They're going to other agencies, other careers, other police agencies that are not run by, ultra left-wing Democrats. And this is what you have now. And you have very dangerous, your major cities are in terrible danger right now. To see New York, for me, is heartbreaking. It seems like so much hard work went into that. And Baltimore as well. People forget there's a human cost that's not just to citizens. When I was commissioner of Baltimore for 3 years, we led the nation every year in crime decline, and murders went down every year dramatically. I buried 7 police officers here.
Let me intervene there for a second.
Right.
We talk about buried police officers, heroes, and something that we talk about an awful lot. You walk the streets with me. We never talk about the millions of good people living in these marginal neighborhoods. They have no standing.
Oh, they're trapped.
These progressive Democrats never talk about them. They have no voice. They're scared to death.
Yeah.
Many in these cities are African American, they're Hispanic, they're white, they're poor. They're poor, or they move if they can afford it. Nobody ever talks about it, ever.
No, I do. I talk all the time when I'm on television now because you hit the nail on the head with that one. The people who are allegedly so concerned with the minority communities in all our cities they're conducting and perpetuating the most awful form of bearded racism.
Right.
Because what this does is they talk about defunding the police. Over 70% of African Americans were against defunding the police.
Right. Exactly.
Because they need them the most.
Right.
People in poor communities, be they, Hispanic, Black, poor white folks, whoever it may be, who needs the police more? All the poor in this country. And to defund them, it really makes me so angry here in particular, because I've heard people talk about this. They vilify the police. They talk about defunding the police. The people who benefit the most live in the worst areas in every city in America. The poorest, most dangerous cities in America benefit the most from good police work. And to defund them is so stupid. I can't believe those words are ever uttered. And it's truly a beautiful form of racism. You don't even know who your constituents are. Who are you protecting? Are you protecting the good people who populate these neighborhoods I've seen grandmothers, I've seen women literally have to sleep in a bathtub because afraid of gunshots coming through the windows. I even had a grandmother who had bolts and padlocks on the inside of her bedroom door to protect herself from her own grandson who was stealing all her property. This is what goes on in inner city America. And this is what these folks do not know. They never see. They have no idea what they're talking about. And the people that do know are the police in every street in America. And they've actually, completely emasculated them.
Now, I have a final question for you, but I know, do you have anything for Fred?
No, go ahead. Go ahead with that.
Something we've never talked about, but we talk about policy. You've been with me and Giuliani and politics. If Ed Norris were king and could, by the wave of a wand, implement 3 policies today in America, what would they be?
Well, I would certainly, if I could actually do something to educate people, I would somehow debunk this huge lie that's destroying the country, that the police are slaughtering, African-American men in record, because this is right out of the Goebbels Nazi playbook. You tell a huge lie over and over and over, and people believe you.
And then all people have to do is go to the Washington Post. As you know, they have a website devoted to that issue. All you have to do is look at the facts.
And it's funny though, if people would bother to read it, they read the headlines and they hear the rhetoric. They don't actually read the facts. And if they actually read and then when you hit them with the numbers, they get all flushed and say, well, that's just, statistics. No, they mean a lot in this case. Because you can't fudge these, because the fact is, what they're saying is completely untrue. The case we just mentioned, Michael Brown, that's a lie, never happened. Freddie Gray, cops were exonerated. George Floyd, cop went to prison. When they misbehave and do awful things, they get prosecuted.
Right.
This is the big lie. This whole thing, that the whole argument is the cops get away with murder, they don't do anything, no one does anything to them when they do. That's not true.
That's not true. They're prosecuted under the authority of the law that we have on the books. Right.
Yes.
All right, that's number 1.
I would dispel this huge lie and try to educate people.
Number 2.
I would put some real leaders in I would make policing a lot more effective in this country. I wouldn't have 6-man police departments and 4-man police departments, honestly. I consolidate them, and I'd have them run by real people. If I were king, I would actually have them run by people who did the work, and not these guys who are bureaucrats, and they go in, they swoop into a city, they sign a contract, they do nothing for 5 years, 3 years, however long they're there. You need people who actually know the business, who are street cops, who made their way up. I used to love when I interview my guys. I go into the Baltimore city and I interviewed commanders for promotion. And the worst thing you could tell me was how many degrees you had. I don't care. I'm college educated. It doesn't matter. I would tell people, guys would come in and say, well, I went to Hopkins. And I was like, that's nice. Congratulations. What have you done for the people of the city? What have you done? Where have you been assigned? And invariably, they worked in planning. They worked in statistics. They gave out pants. Like, they did no police work. And this is what you have. You have people who are papered to death with college degrees and graduate degrees and law degrees, running police agencies, who couldn't find a bleeding elephant in the snow.
All right, we have dispel a myth. We have install leaders in leadership positions. What's your third?
The third one is really, I don't even know where to start with this. It would be how to undo what's been done with these activist prosecutors around the country. I don't know if they should be appointed or, because unfortunately, a lot of cities, when they're elected, in cities like this, sometimes, how you guys know better than anybody how elections go. More people can vote against you than for you, and you can still win. And that's what happens. It happened here. So more people vote against you, but the vote's split by 2 or 3 candidates. And the activist candidate gets in, and they see it as a referendum to continue what they're doing. And you have this awful, temperature or atmosphere that's going on in the country right now, where the cops are the villains when they're anything but. Criminals get a free pass. Cities are dangerous, and people flee. I mean, major cities are fleeing. Baltimore, people are leaving every day.
Right.
New York City, I go back all the time. It doesn't look anything like it did when we got it clean and safe, and it looks nothing like it.
And that has nothing to do with race. You have black flight, you have white flight, you have flight. If you can afford it, you're out because you want to go to somewhere safe.
People in these positions try to make it about race because it's an easy card to throw all the time.
Right.
They just do it to me all the time. They say, well, most of the people you're stopping are black. Well, the fact is the city's 70% black. So of course they're going to be. And second of all, it's not about we send the police to black neighborhoods. We send them to the dangerous, areas where the police are needed the most. If they happen to be black or Hispanic or whatever, that's where they are. We don't follow race. We follow the crime. And unfortunately, I think people have an amazing capacity for the truth. If you tell them these things, they'll believe you. But if you back up and you cower every time they throw the race card,
right.
you're going to lose.
I agree. You have to stand up to it. And with facts. And the facts are on our side. The other thing is, I am concerned there is such low morale, no recruitment. How can we turn that around? I guess the answer to that is really strong leadership once again, right?
It's all about leadership. It's all about leadership. There are people I work for who I, run through a wall. I said it when you guys had your portraits unveiled. Yeah. I said, I'd follow you.
And just so for our listeners and observers here, Ed was the MC when our portraits were unveiled.
That's right.
And your comment was something along the lines, you'd walk through the gates of hell for the Ehrlichs, and the Ehrlichs love you for that, trust me.
Yeah, I said other people would follow it with $4. Yeah. And that's it. It's all about leadership. If you find people, police officers still say it to me. I'd follow you through the gates of hell, so it's not the same. It's all about leadership, and unfortunately, we don't have any right now. Right. Or if we do, I haven't seen much. Because there's very few people willing to speak up now for fear of, having your career completely derailed.
And leadership is not about popularity. It's not about political correctness. It's not about progressivism. It's about caring about people and doing the right thing. And unfortunately, given the environment and the culture, we see it's very difficult to be that leader today. Although we believe there's an appetite for it. There really is. So, listen, we love you very much. I look forward to the day when somehow we can get you back into public service to benefit the people of Maryland, the United States of America. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your lifetime devotion to our people, to these issues that we care so much about. And,
I do.
And any parting words for our listeners around the country?
To me, this is the most important problem facing America right now, more than any external threat, because this country can be taken down from within. And if you let your cities fall and they're unsafe and you totally vilify your police officers in this country, you're going to have a very, very bleak future. And that's what's really scaring me right now. It's not what you're being told, this enormous lie over and over and over. Read your history, folks. This is what happens when people, have agendas. You're being lied to. This is not reality. You don't have 850,000 racists running around in police cars. That's not what's going on out there. And your cities are suffering because these idiots who are running some of the major cities in this country. It's really it's a sad state of affairs. I'd like to see it turn around somehow. We need some leaders. Unfortunately,
we need leaders, and we need people to pay attention and vote.
Yeah. One man with courage makes a majority. I think Andrew Jackson said that, I think. But it's true. One man with courage makes a majority, and that's what you need is someone with courage, man or woman, to stand up and say, no, that's not true. We're doing this.
Thank you, my friend.
That's Ed Norris, everybody. Thanks for listening to Bottom Line with Bob and Kendel Ehrlich. Please go to the website. You can hear our podcast there and look at all things Ehrlich.
Godspeed. Thank you very much.